China Airlines 611, climb and maintain flight level 350. Roger, climbing flight level 350, 611. These were among the last routine words exchanged between China Airlines Flight 611 and air traffic control on that fateful Saturday afternoon of May 25, 2002. 20 minutes later, this Boeing 747 would vanish from radar screens, its 225 souls scattered across the dark waters of the Taiwan Strait in what would become one of aviation's most haunting mysteries of structural failure. The blue skies above Taiwan concealed a ticking time bomb that had been counting down for 22 years, hidden beneath layers of aluminum and false security, waiting for the perfect storm of altitude and pressure to unleash catastrophe upon an unsuspecting flight crew and their passengers who believed they were simply taking a routine hop from Taipei to Hong Kong. Flight 611 represented everything that was routine about modern aviation in the early 2000s. The aircraft itself, a Boeing 747-209B, registered as B18255, rolled off Boeing's production line in 1979 and had served China Airlines faithfully for over 2 decades. By the morning of May 25th, this particular queen of the skies had accumulated more than 64,000 flight hours across countless Pacific crossings, carrying millions of passengers safely between Asian destinations. Her 4 Pratt and Whitney JT9D engines had proven themselves reliable workhorses, and her spacious cabin could accommodate 315 passengers in a typical configuration. Captain Yi Ching-fong, 54 years old with over 13,000 flight hours under his belt, had been flying for China Airlines since 1979 and knew the Boeing 747 like his own heartbeat. First Officer Dave Shao, considerably younger at 40 but no less experienced with 4,600 flight hours, represented the new generation of professional pilots trained in modern flight management systems and crew resource management protocols. Flight engineer Chen Qingwei rounded out the cockpit crew, his technical expertise essential for monitoring the complex systems that kept the massive aircraft aloft. The cabin crew of 16 flight attendants had prepared the passenger cabin with their usual efficiency, ensuring that the 206 passengers aboard were comfortable for what should have been a straightforward 90-minute flight to Hong Kong International Airport. The day itself seemed blessed with perfect flying weather. Clear skies stretched endlessly above Taiwan, with light winds and excellent visibility, creating ideal conditions for departure from Chiang Kai-shek International Airport, now known as Taiwan Taoyuan International Airport. Passengers settled into their seats with the casual confidence that comes from routine travel, many of them frequent flyers on this popular route between Taiwan and Hong Kong. Business executives reviewed presentations on laptop computers. Families with children distributed snacks and entertainment devices. Elderly passengers adjusted their seatbelts and prepared for what they expected to be an uneventful journey. The aircraft itself showed no signs of distress during pre-flight inspections. External walk-around checks revealed nothing unusual about the fuselage, wings, or control surfaces. Internal systems tests came back green across the board. Fuel quantity was appropriate for the flight plan, plus required reserves. Weight and balance calculations fell well within acceptable parameters. Every procedural checkbox had been ticked. Every safety protocol followed to the letter. The only indication that this flight might be different from thousands of others was invisible to human eyes, hidden deep within the aircraft's aluminum skin where microscopic cracks had been growing slowly, steadily, inevitably for over 2 decades. At 2:50 p.m. local time, Flight 611 began its takeoff roll from runway 05 right at Chiang Kai-shek International Airport. The massive Boeing 747 accelerated smoothly down the concrete ribbon, her engines producing their familiar thunder as Captain Yi pulled back on the yoke and lifted the nose into Taiwan's azure afternoon sky. The gear retracted with mechanical precision, flaps came up on schedule, and the aircraft settled into its initial climb profile exactly as thousands of previous flights had done. Air traffic control cleared them to climb to 35,000 feet, a routine altitude for this route that would take them efficiently across the Taiwan Strait toward Hong Kong. The cockpit voice recorder captured the normal sounds of a professional flight crew going about their business. Altitude callouts, airspeed confirmations, navigation waypoint acknowledgements, the subtle background hum of air conditioning and electrical systems functioning normally. Passengers felt the familiar sensation of being pressed into their seats as the aircraft climbed steadily upward, many of them already opening books, adjusting pillows, or gazing out windows at the shrinking landscape of Taiwan below. Nothing in the cockpit or cabin suggested that beneath their feet, hidden in the belly of the aircraft, a catastrophic structural failure was building toward its inevitable conclusion. The crack that would destroy Flight 611 had first appeared 22 years earlier, on February 7, 1980, when this same Boeing 747 had suffered what aviation professionals call a tail strike during landing at Hong Kong's old Kai Tak Airport. Tail strikes occur when pilots misjudge their approach angle and the aircraft's tail section makes contact with the runway surface, typically causing superficial damage to the lower fuselage skin. Such incidents are not uncommon and usually result in relatively straightforward repairs. However, the repair work performed on B-18255, following that long-ago tail strike, would prove to be fatally inadequate, setting in motion a chain of events that would culminate in this sunny afternoon over the Taiwan Strait. According to Boeing's Structural Repair Manual, proper repair of tail strike damage requires either complete replacement of the damaged skin section or careful removal of the damaged area, followed by installation of a reinforcing doubler plate to restore structural integrity. The critical factor is ensuring that all scratches and score marks created by the initial impact are completely removed before any permanent repair work begins. These seemingly minor surface imperfections can act as stress concentration points, where cracks can initiate and propagate over time, especially under the cyclical loading that aircraft experienced during normal flight operations. Unfortunately, the repair team working on B-18255 in 1980 chose to install a doubler plate directly over the existing damage without first removing the scratched and scored aluminum skin. This shortcut would prove lethal 22 years later. From the moment that improper repair was completed, Flight 611 was living on borrowed time. Every flight cycle, every pressurization and depressurization of the cabin, every load imposed by turbulence or maneuvering stresses contributed to the slow growth of fatigue cracks emanating from those unrepaired scratches. The process was invisible to routine inspections because the doubler plate concealed the growing damage beneath. Year after year, the cracks extended outward and upward through the aluminum structure, following the path of least resistance through the crystalline matrix of the metal. The aircraft continued to pass all required inspections and maintenance checks because the damage remained hidden and the structure retained sufficient strength to handle normal flight loads. Passengers and crew remained blissfully unaware that they were flying in an aircraft whose structural integrity was slowly but inexorably compromising itself with each passing flight. As Flight 611 climbed through the middle altitudes on that May afternoon, the differential pressure between the aircraft's pressurized cabin and the thinning atmosphere outside increased steadily. At sea level, the cabin pressure approximately equals atmospheric pressure, creating minimal stress on the fuselage structure. However, as the aircraft climbs higher, the cabin pressure system maintains a comfortable environment for passengers and crew by keeping internal pressure significantly higher than the rapidly decreasing external pressure. This differential pressure creates substantial loads on the fuselage skin, which must act like a pressure vessel to contain the cabin atmosphere. For a properly designed and maintained aircraft, these loads present no problem. The fuselage structure is engineered with generous safety margins to handle the cyclical stresses of pressurization and depressurization over tens of thousands of flight cycles. But Flight 611 was no longer a properly maintained aircraft, though neither the crew nor passengers could possibly have known this. The cockpit voice recorder captured the final routine moments of Flight 611 as the aircraft continued its climb toward its assigned cruising altitude. Captain Yi and his crew were presumably monitoring their navigation displays, confirming their progress along the planned route, and preparing for the cruise phase of flight. Cabin crew members were likely beginning their service preparations, getting ready to serve beverages and light refreshments to passengers. The mood throughout the aircraft would have been relaxed and unremarkable, with passengers reading, sleeping, working, or simply enjoying the spectacular view of the Taiwan Strait spreading out below them. Weather conditions remained excellent, with clear skies and smooth air providing ideal flying conditions. Nothing in the cockpit indications suggested any problem with aircraft systems or structure. Engine parameters remained normal, cabin pressurization was functioning properly, Flight controls responded normally to pilot inputs, and all warning systems remained silent. As the Boeing 747 climbed through 34,900 feet, approaching its assigned altitude of 35,000 feet, the accumulated fatigue damage in the lower fuselage finally reached its critical threshold. The crack that had been growing invisibly for 22 years suddenly underwent what structural engineers call rapid crack propagation. In a matter of seconds, the fatigue crack burst outward from its concealed location beneath the doubler plate, racing along the fuselage skin at nearly the speed of sound. The crack followed the path of maximum stress, shooting upward along the left side of the aircraft's belly, curving around the crown of the fuselage and connecting with itself on the opposite side. This catastrophic crack propagation effectively unzipped the aircraft's pressure vessel, creating a massive opening that instantly compromised the structural integrity of the entire airframe. The explosive decompression that followed was beyond anything that commercial aviation had ever witnessed. The differential pressure that had been safely contained within the cabin for the entire flight suddenly found a massive escape route through the ruptured fuselage. The result was not the relatively controlled decompression that pilots train for in simulators, where a small hole or failed door seal allows cabin pressure to equalize gradually with outside atmospheric pressure. Instead, Flight 611 experienced an explosive failure that tore the aircraft's structure apart in seconds. The fuselage, no longer able to maintain its cylindrical shape without the continuous skin that provided structural continuity, began to twist and buckle under the aerodynamic and inertial loads of high-speed flight. The cockpit voice recorder captured only the briefest sounds of this catastrophic event. A sudden bang, possibly the initial crack propagation, followed immediately by the sound of rushing air, and then silence. The electrical systems that powered the cockpit voice recorder were severed along with everything else as the aircraft's structure disintegrated. Captain Yi and his crew would have had no time to react, no opportunity to declare an emergency or attempt any emergency procedures. The breakup occurred so rapidly that human reflexes could not have processed what was happening, much less formulated any response. The passengers throughout the cabin would have experienced similar confusion and terror, with no warning that their routine flight was about to become a nightmare of structural failure and uncontrolled descent toward the waters of the Taiwan Strait far below. Radar controllers watching Flight 611's progress on their screens witnessed the aircraft's disappearance in real time, though they could not immediately comprehend what they were seeing. The aircraft's transponder signal, which had been providing normal altitude and identification data, simply vanished from their displays. One moment, Flight 611 was a routine contact climbing normally toward Hong Kong, and the next moment, it was gone. Initial assumption was that the aircraft had experienced some sort of communication or transponder failure, both of which are not uncommon in commercial aviation. Controllers attempted to re-establish contact with Flight 611 using emergency frequencies, but received no response. Other aircraft in the vicinity were asked to attempt communication with the China Airlines flight, but their calls went unanswered. As minutes ticked by without any contact, the growing realization that something catastrophic had occurred began to settle over the control room. The debris field that remained of Flight 611 scattered across a wide area of the Taiwan Strait, approximately 23 nautical miles northeast of the Penghu Islands. The aircraft's breakup at high altitude meant that pieces of wreckage followed different ballistic trajectories as they fell toward the water, creating a debris pattern that stretched for miles across the ocean surface. The largest sections of wreckage, including portions of the wings and fuselage, struck the water with tremendous force after falling more than 6 miles from the breakup altitude. Smaller pieces, including personal belongings and human remains, were distributed over an even wider area by wind currents during their long descent to the sea. Search and rescue operations began immediately once it became clear that Flight 611 had suffered a catastrophic accident. Taiwan's military and Coast Guard assets were dispatched to the last known position of the aircraft, joined by civilian vessels and aircraft from multiple agencies. The search area covered hundreds of square nautical miles of open ocean, with rescue crews hoping against hope that they might find survivors clinging to debris or life rafts. However, the violence of the aircraft's breakup and the impact with the water made survival impossible for any of the 225 people aboard. The first bodies recovered by fishing boats and military vessels were found floating on the ocean surface, stark evidence of the human tragedy that had unfolded in the skies above the Taiwan Strait. Recovery efforts continued for weeks as investigators and search teams worked to locate as much of the aircraft wreckage as possible. Understanding what had caused Flight 611 to disintegrate in flight required painstaking reconstruction of the debris pattern and analysis of every piece of recovered wreckage. The cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, known collectively as black boxes, were eventually located and recovered from the ocean floor, though their data provided limited insight into the rapid sequence of events that destroyed the aircraft. More crucial to the investigation was the physical examination of wreckage pieces, particularly sections of the fuselage that showed clear evidence of fatigue cracking and structural failure. The investigation, conducted by Taiwan's Aviation Safety Council, with assistance from the United States National Transportation Safety Board and Boeing, ultimately determined that Flight 611's destruction resulted directly from the inadequate repair performed following the tail strike incident 22 years earlier. Microscopic examination of the fracture surfaces revealed the telltale beach marks characteristic of fatigue crack growth, clearly showing how the crack had propagated slowly over thousands of flight cycles before reaching its critical size on that May afternoon. The investigation found that the repair work performed in 1980 had violated Boeing's structural repair manual by failing to remove the damaged skin before installing the doubler plate, creating the exact conditions that would lead to hidden fatigue crack growth. This finding had profound implications for the entire aviation industry. Flight 611's accident demonstrated that improper maintenance practices could remain undetected for decades before manifesting in catastrophic failure. The concept of hidden damage, concealed beneath repair patches and inaccessible to routine inspections, forced aircraft manufacturers and operators worldwide to re-evaluate their maintenance procedures and inspection techniques. Boeing issued new service bulletins requiring enhanced inspection of areas around previous tail strike repairs, while regulatory authorities mandated new procedures for structural repair work to prevent similar occurrences in the future. The human cost of Flight 611's destruction extended far beyond the 225 lives lost in the Taiwan Strait. Families across Asia and around the world lost loved ones in an accident that could have been prevented through proper maintenance procedures 2 decades earlier. The crew members, from Captain Yi with his thousands of hours of professional flying experience to the newest flight attendant beginning her career with China Airlines, died because of maintenance shortcuts taken long before most of them had even joined the company. Passengers who had entrusted their lives to the professionalism of commercial aviation became victims of a systemic failure that stretched back to a single moment of inadequate workmanship in a Hong Kong hangar in 1980. China Airlines faced intense scrutiny following the accident, with investigators examining not only the specific repair that led to Flight 611's destruction, but also the airline's overall maintenance culture and procedures. The company implemented comprehensive changes to its maintenance practices, including enhanced training for repair technicians, improved quality assurance procedures, and more rigorous inspection protocols for older aircraft. The airline also cooperated fully with victim families and government authorities in addressing the aftermath of the tragedy, though no amount of corporate responsibility could restore the lives lost over the Taiwan Strait. The aviation industry's response to Flight 611's accident extended well beyond China Airlines and Taiwan. Aircraft operators worldwide reviewed their maintenance records to identify aircraft that had experienced tail strikes or similar structural damage, implementing enhanced inspection procedures to detect any signs of hidden fatigue cracking. Regulatory authorities developed new requirements for structural repair documentation and quality assurance, ensuring that future repair work would meet the highest standards of engineering practice. Maintenance training programs were updated to emphasize the critical importance of following manufacturer repair procedures exactly, with no shortcuts or improvisations that might compromise long-term structural integrity. Boeing itself used the lessons learned from Flight 611 to improve its structural repair guidance and inspection recommendations. The company developed new non-destructive inspection techniques capable of detecting fatigue cracks beneath repair patches, giving maintenance personnel the tools needed to identify hidden damage before it could reach critical proportions. These technical advances, combined with improved training and quality assurance procedures, represented the industry's commitment to preventing similar accidents in the future. The memory of Flight 611 serves as a powerful reminder that commercial aviation safety depends on the integrity of every single maintenance action performed on every aircraft throughout its service life. The passengers and crew who died in the Taiwan Strait on May 25, 2002, trusted that the aircraft carrying them had been properly maintained and inspected according to the highest professional standards. Their deaths underscore the awesome responsibility that rests on the shoulders of every mechanic, inspector, and engineer who touches an aircraft during its operational life. A moment of carelessness, a shortcut taken to save time or money, a procedure not followed to the letter, can remain hidden for decades before claiming innocent lives in the most violent possible manner. Today, as you board your next commercial flight and settle into your seat with the confidence that comes from aviation's extraordinary safety record, remember that your security depends on thousands of maintenance professionals around the world who understand the lessons of Flight 611. Every rivet properly installed, every crack properly repaired, every inspection properly performed represents a commitment to ensuring that no other aircraft will disintegrate over a peaceful stretch of ocean, taking with it the hopes and dreams of everyone aboard. The victims of China Airlines Flight 611 deserve nothing less than our eternal vigilance in maintaining the systems that keep commercial aviation the safest form of transportation ever devised by human ingenuity. If this story has moved you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who need to understand the critical importance of aviation maintenance. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that honor the memory of those lost while teaching us the lessons that keep flying safe for all of us. The 225 souls lost over the Taiwan Strait 23 years ago continue to protect every flight that takes off today, through the maintenance improvements and safety enhancements that followed their tragic sacrifice. Let us never forget their legacy of making aviation safer for everyone who follows in their contrails across the endless sky.